now we're going to go to the next part, the next organelle, that's the mitochondria. So let's start with mitochondria. Like right over here that I've drawn the structure, the mitochondria is present over here, that is embedded into the cytoplasm. And I have magnified the drawing over here just for you to be clear about it. So the mitochondria has two membranes in it. One is the inner membrane and the other is the outer membrane. So the outer membrane is this that you see right over here. And then there's the inner membrane. Now inner membrane is inside, that you can see over here, it's the folded structure. Now the next one that we have is known as a cristae. Now cristae are small structures that are present on the curves of these folds. You don't have to study much about the cristae because it's not in your portion, so let's just keep our focus on the mitochondria. So mitochondria, it comes in various shapes. It is cupular, right over here. I've drawn the structure, you can have a gist of it. Then the word mitochondria comes from a Greek origin, and in the Greek origin it means that mito is a thread-like structure and chondrion is a granule or a grain. So it's a small thread like a structure that is granular in the shape and texture. So it is precisely very clear over here with the shape too. So now mitochondria is made up of two words from the Greek origin, that is mito and the chondrion. Mito means thread-like structure, chondrion means it's granular. The next point for mitochondria is it's really minute in size, and its size ranges from 0.5 to 1 μm. So imagine how incredibly small it is. But even though it being so small, it is known as the powerhouse of the cell. Now why the powerhouse of the cell? Because the structure of mitochondria produces a chemical substance that is known as ATP. ATP is nothing but adenosine triphosphate. ATP. Now this ATP provides energy to the whole of the cell to perform the activities, and ATP is taken up from the food that we eat. So this mitochondria provides energy to perform functions. How does it help us to perform functions? By synthesizing a chemical substance known as the ATP, that is the adenosine triphosphate. Let me write it down for you. Adenosine triphosphate. Of course, you don't have to focus on this, but this is just a general knowledge for the higher classes that you would go in. Then the last part of the mitochondria, the last function of the mitochondria would be that it is involved in cell signaling, in cell death, in the regulation of the cellular processes. Now, cell signaling is nothing but I told you about how the CNS, that is the central processing unit of a system or an organism, is responsible for sending the messages from itself to the site where it wants the change to occur. So the whole process is known as cell signaling in it. Then now I'll just give you a gist about mitochondria. Again, so how we started off was with the mitochondria having the outer and the inner membrane. And on the folds of the inner membrane, you could find small structures that would be cristae. Now, the mitochondria is ranging from the size of 0.5 to 1 μm. So, even if it is so small in size, you can understand that it is a powerhouse of the cell. Why is it the powerhouse of the cell? Because it produces a chemical like adenosine triphosphate that helps in the activities and processes that happen in the cell. Now we get this energy, the chemical energy, synthesized by the mitochondria when it uptakes from the food and that we consume. The last point would be that it is involved in cell signaling, in cell death, and the regulation of the activities. Now we'll just have a gist about everything we learned so that it is summarized to you. So what we started was with the structure of the animal cell. We learned that the animal cell was a eukaryotic structure. Eukaryotic cell because it had a well-defined nucleus. Now let's move on to the nucleus part. Nucleus is the centrally located and the largest organelle present in the cell. It is responsible for controlling all the activities of the cell. It is porous, like right you can see over here, you can see that it is porous. And because it is porous, it is helpful in transferring the genetic material out of the cell. So the genetic material is nothing but the DNA and the RNA. The DNA and the RNA. Now DNA's full form is deoxyribonucleic acid and RNA's full form is riboxynucleic acid. Let me repeat that again for you. The full form of DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid and RNA's is ribonucleic acid, riboxynucleic acid. Then we learned that DNA was responsible for giving us the characteristics that we have present in our body. Let it be the physical characteristics or let it be the behavioral characteristics. Then we also learned that the DNA does not have the cytoplasm present in it. Like the rest of the cell organelles were suspended in the cytoplasm, but in the case of the nucleus that was not there. The next we learned was about the cytoplasm. We learned that cytoplasm is the semi-fluid that has water-soluble organic and inorganic substances in it, suspended in it, in the whole of the cell, and it embeds the other organelles that are present in the cell and that carry out the normal activities of the cell. Then we learned about the vacuoles. Vacuoles you can see right over here. These are the empty spaces which store the excretory products and the secretions temporarily, and they are more in number in the animal cells and smaller in size in animal cells than the plant cells. I'll be explaining to you about the plant cells too. Then we learned about the Golgi bodies. We learned in that the Golgi bodies were flat structures that were embedded in again the cytoplasm, and it had enzymes stored in it. Now these enzymes would help us perform activities of the cell, and I told you that enzymes are nothing but they are the chemicals that help in increasing the pace and enhancing the pace of the reactions that happen in the living cells. Lastly, we also learned about the cell membrane. That was a very important part. Cell membrane is nothing but this whole of the outer covering. Now this outer covering gives the shape to the cell. It is definite in shape, it is flexible, and it was thin. We learned from the cell membrane this. We also learned that cell membrane provides protection to the organelles that are present inside of the cell. Then we learned about the mitochondria. That was right now. I explained to you by magnifying the mitochondria on this part that mitochondria had an outer membrane as well as the inner membrane. An inner membrane had folds on it, and on the folds were present small structures that were cristae. The size of the mitochondria is 0.5 to 1 μm. It is so small, but it also is known as the powerhouse of the cell since it produces the chemical that is ATP right here. ATP is nothing but adenosine triphosphate. Now, in this adenosine triphosphate, this is produced when the mitochondria takes up the simplest form of the food that we consume. That is, food is also a complex material when we eat it, but when it's digested, it comes to its building block form. So that is taken up and that's produced. The mitochondria is involved in cell signaling, in cell death, and the regulation of the body processes. Then we learned about the origin of the mitochondria, the name mitochondria. we learned that mitochondria came from a Greek origin, and it meant that mito meant thread, chondria meant granule. It's granular in the shape. So you can see it over here that it is truly a mitochondria after the name. Now, since we are done talking about the animal cell structure, let's shift to the plant cell structure right over here. So we'll, as usual, start with the same process by labeling the organelles present inside the cell structure. So we'll start with the cell membrane. We know that this inner membrane right over here that I'm marking, the hexagonal shape with the white chalk, that is the cell membrane of the plant. Then comes the plastids. This structure right over here that you see is the plastid. This. Now plastid stores pigments like chlorophylls and carotenoids and xanthophyll and other pigments that provide color to the plant. The next one is the vacuole. The vacuole is this structure, this organelle right over here, that's the hugest vacuole. Then we have the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm again is the same space that is shaded in the pink, that I have shaded in the pink, and cytoplasm again stores and embeds the organelles that are present inside. Then is the Golgi body. The Golgi body is right over here. The structures you see over here, these small structures, these are Golgi bodies, and they store enzymes in it just as the enzymes are stored in the animal cell that I explained to you right over here. They have the same function. Then we have the mitochondria. The mitochondria is right over here, and it performs the same functions just like the animal mitochondria does, that is over here. It gives it is the energy source of plants as well, and it is the energy source of animal cells as well. Then we have the nucleus, that is right over here. This is the nucleus. Now the nucleus shape over here and the nucleus shape over here is the same, except for the center body is a little smaller, and it performs the same functions. It is and the only difference in the positioning is that the nucleus in the animal cell is centrally located, while the nucleus in the plant cell is located on the side. And the center body that is over here is smaller right over here compared to the center body that is present over here. Otherwise, it is same porous, it has same connections, it can allow the passage of the DNA and the RNA in and out, and it uses the enzymes. Now the only addition to the whole of the structure of the plant cell is that it has this rigid coat on it that you can see over here. There is a rigid coat present up here, and this rigid coat is nothing but the cell wall right over here. That's the cell wall. Now cell wall is only found in plants. It is outside the cell membrane. As you can see over here, it is right outside the cell membrane. This is the cell membrane that is inside, and this rigid coat is outside the cell membrane. Then we come to know that the whole of this structure provides protection to the inner part of the plant, because there is no other mode or defensive mechanism with the plant. Plants cannot locomote, so that this rigid structure that is made up of cellulose right over here, cellulose is responsible for providing protection to the inner part of the plant and giving it the cell strength. Then we also come to know that this cell wall gives the whole plant cell a very definite shape, because of which they can maintain their shape and structure. Then let's just again go through the whole of the plant cell structure. Now what we learned was, we learned that the plant cells also have cell membrane just like the animal cells do over here. Now I explained to you that the cell membrane In case of animal cells, it was flexible, it was thin in shape, it was surrounding the whole of the cell, and it was providing it protection, and it was entrapping and compactly closing all the organelles inside the cytoplasm. So it's the same with the case of the plant cell. The plant cell also does the same thing with the cell wall, that it closes all the organelles that are from mitochondria to the Golgi bodies to vacuoles to the nucleus. Inside it provides it protection, and it is also flexible, and it is also thin in structure. Then the next we came towards the nucleus. We learned over here that the nucleus is not centrally located, it's located on the side of the plant cell, and it is same porous just like the animal cell. And we also learned that the mitochondria did the same functions, that is, it performed the same function as being the powerhouse of the cell. Instead, the size of mitochondria is different than the size of the mitochondria present in the animal cell. Then we learned about the Golgi bodies. The Golgi body did, right over here you can see, the Golgi bodies did the same functions, that was to store the enzymes in it and to release these enzymes when they are required. The next we learned was about vacuoles. Now if you remember, I told you that in the plants, the size of the vacuoles, right over here you can see, these are the vacuoles. The size of the vacuoles is smaller compared to the size of the vacuole, that is right over here, present in the plant cells. So we also learned about plastids, and now plastid is a different organelle that is present only in the plant cell and not the animal cell, because plastids store pigments like chlorophyll, carotenoids, etc. Now chlorophyll is responsible for giving the green color to the plant, and carotenoids are responsible for giving the plants a reddish color. So there's a reasoning behind these two also for emitting the colors. That is because of the range of the visible spectrum to us, that is a light range. In this range of light, according to different wavelengths, different colors are reflected. So the wavelength that is portable for the carotenoids to absorb and reflect give a range of the light that emits the red color or the reddish pinkish color. For chlorophylls it's the same, but it just emits the green color. Now over here, that the plastids are also responsible for performing functions like photosynthesis, because in photosynthesis chlorophyll is required for the plants to produce food for themselves, and we know that plants are autotrophs, that they can produce food for themselves, while the animal cells lack it, so they are not autotrophs. That means they cannot produce food for themselves.
No more spending your energy and money on coaching classes, or missing classes for rain, for rally, and any other nonsense. Subjects covered by multiple teachers with repeat telecasts. Doubts, concepts, applications, no problem. All explained through great and significant animation. So sit back comfortably in your home and watch Study Spectrum TV channel.
Summarize about the cell wall. We learned that cell wall was found only in plants. That is, this rigid cellulose structure is found only in plants, and it is responsible for providing protection to the plant and give it its definite shape and rigidity. We also learned that there are other substances that can pass through the cell wall in and out. Obviously, for the plant to carry out functions like respiration, exchange of food, etc., and all the other functions. We also came to know that this cell wall is responsible for giving the cell its strength and for protecting it and giving it a definite shape, as I told you earlier. So the next point of differentiation in plant cell and the animal cell would be that I just explained to you right now that these plant cells have plastids, organelles known as plastids, that contain chlorophyll in it, and this chlorophyll is responsible for the process of photosynthesis, which help the plant to make or produce food for themselves, while in the animal cell we do not see that. Animal cells lack plastids and therefore they lack chlorophyll. So the point of differentiation would be that the plant cells have chlorophyll present in them, while the animal cells lack chlorophyll in them. The third and the last point of differentiation is that I told you that with the example over here, with this observation over here, I explained to you that the size of vacuoles is really huge and large in plants, while the size of vacuoles right over here is not that huge. But the number of vacuoles in the plant cells is much lesser than the number of vacuoles in the animal cells, that is right over here. So the last point of differentiation is that plants have larger size of vacuoles and lesser number of vacuoles, while the animal cells have smaller size of vacuoles and more number of vacuoles. So we'll again count the 3 points of differentiation. The first one was that the plant cells have cell wall with them and the cell membrane in the inner part, while the animal cells, they lack the cell wall and contain only the cell membrane. The second point is that the plant cells have chlorophyll pigments in them that help them produce food by the process of photosynthesis, while the animal cells, they lack the chlorophyll material and hence are not autotroph. The size of vacuoles is smaller in the animal cells, while the number of vacuoles, that is the empty space, this is less in the plants, and this, the number of vacuoles, that is the empty spaces right over here, is more in animal cells. So these were the point of distinctions in the plant cells and animal cells. Now we would be moving further with our next objective, that was to understand the importance of microorganisms and the type of microorganisms, and to differentiate in the good microorganisms and the bad microorganisms for us, that would be the pathogens that affect the host. So we'll now understand with the next objective, that is to understand about the microorganisms, about the types of microorganisms. I told you in the starting that there are certain microorganisms that are beneficial for us, while there are certain microorganisms that are not beneficial for us, and they are also known as pathogens. And we would also study about the structure of these microorganisms and the types of these microorganisms further.